shorten it a little bit. So, since we're running short on time, I was just going to start and just maybe say a little bit about myself. So I'm Ken Westrick, and I'm at a company down in Medellin, Colombia, that's working in renewable energy. And yeah, that's the one. And I just shortened my presentation a little bit so we can try and get to a panel, panel questions. And what I worked in is in renewable energy. That advances it? Okay, great. So I work in renewable energy, and one of the things that I've been really passionate about, my background is I'm a climate scientist, and climate change is happening, and we really have to move a lot of the world towards renewable energy sources. And about 1.5 billion people in the world don't have access to electricity. And as someone that's looked at resources around the world in renewable energies, water, wind, and solar, we're blessed, and other renewables too, but we're blessed with a great deal of fuel to fuel renewable energies. And 90% of the renewable energy generation comes from the weather and climate system. So that's kind of my background, and that's what I'm going to focus on here. GIS, the role that GIS plays in what we do, and it's very much similar to many of the other speakers, is with a lot of the mapping capability, running these climate models and these hydrological models, you can create very high resolution GIS layers of hydro and solar and wind. And it's not just the map, but it's also time series and data layers that you can put into financial models and figure out where the cost of electricity from a renewable energy generation source is cleaner than something else that they're doing right now. And so I was at a company called 3Tier, which is based up in Seattle, Washington. I'll get into that in a minute. Just a little bit about how we do this. So numerical weather prediction models are these computer models that basically run across rows and rows of computers. A lot of differential equations, a lot of math. Basically, what comes out of that is information, geospatial information about what the weather and climate is doing. And from that information, we went, at 3Tier, we took this data, and one of the things we did was create maps. And you see the wind maps that are out there for wind developers and solar developers. One of the things that I wanted to do back in 2008 is one of the things that was really holding up renewable energy in the world was awareness. A lot of people in the world did not know what kind of renewable energy they had. The NASA data that's available for the entire globe is at about 1 degree resolution. It might be a little bit higher than that, 110 kilometers. You really got, especially for wind, you need to get down to about a 5-kilometer resolution. And in order to really do that, we don't have observations around the world at 5-kilometer resolution. So these numerical weather prediction models, coupled with observations, can create maps like this. And we came out with this at 3Tier in 2008, and you can zoom into any of these areas. We released this at the climate conference in Poznan, and I cannot tell you how many ministers were coming up, and we had a poster about the size of the wall there, and pointing at their country and starting to realize the potentials they didn't even know that they had, because there was no measurements in those areas. So this again is that whole create awareness and getting people to recognize that there's an opportunity. And lo and behold, even in the United States, our maps were featured by T-Poon Pickens for the several weeks that he liked wind and went back to natural gas. But he presented this on 60 Minutes. He was down on the floor of Congress showing what he called the Saudi Arabia of wind in the middle part of the United States. So it really these maps are very powerful to get politicians and others to get energized, no pun intended, energized to start looking at renewable energy. And we came up with a tool that you could click on, and it would tell you the wind speed anywhere in the world. And we did the same thing for solar. And we had this out there, and it was free. People could click on it and get the wind speed anywhere in the world. I left 3Tier about 3 years ago. One of the things that when we came up with this product, we got a lot of phone calls. People would call us up, and they'd say, from all over the world, hey, I got a 4 meter per second wind speed. Should I put in renewable energy? And the answer is not that simple. So what I've been working on the last couple years is putting in a lot more data layers. So if you look at the resource information, this is wind speeds over Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, And you know, it's Central and South America. I live down in Medellin, which is about in the middle of that map. And you can see the higher wind speeds. And if you see 14 meters per second or 12 or 10 meters per second, what does that mean? No one really knows. You just know it's windy. But is it profitable? Does it make sense to put in a project? So in order to get that next layer of GIS understanding, you really have to put it into the technology. You got to put it through a wind power curve or solar power curve, and then you start to understand how much power can be generated from that system. And then the last layer that you need to put in is the economic or the financial information. And this is what we've been working on the last couple of years down in Latin America, because then instead of having a map where you're showing a resource, you can show maps where you can show the return on investment, where it's more profitable to put in a wind system over a solar system, where a hybrid system is going to beat diesel, which I'll show you in a minute, is about everywhere in Latin America. But the bottom line from all this is you're starting to get actionable information that you can make investment decisions on. I was just down in Miami at the Renewable Energy Finance Forum for Latin America, showing some of this stuff. Investors are interested. They want to put their money into good projects. There's a lot of interest in renewable energy, especially in a lot of the developing countries. And these kind of tools give them the confidence that they know they're putting in good projects, good locations, that are going to give them some kind of return on investment. And these are some of the maps. This is what it would be for cost parity. The left-hand side there is essentially solar information, which you can see kind of varies by region, but also looking at the cost parity. If you look at the cost for solar, and this basically, the axis on the left there, where it goes from 27 to 18, is the cents, the equivalent levelized cost of energy in cents that you could deliver that power for. And you can see 18 cents, which is much lower than what a lot of these areas are paying for power. So solar in a lot of these areas where they have the great resource is a no-brainer. They should be putting it in right now. The cost for solar panels have gone down by 2/3 in the last 5 years. It's not the old solar panel. The right-hand image is really powerful because it shows you the importance of policy. And it shows you the importance of the cost of electricity in those countries. Chile has a very high cost of electricity, and you can see that in red, where the return on a system of solar that you would put in is under 20 years. And actually this needs to be updated because that was based on numbers from about 1.5 years ago. So it's very economical that you could put in a solar system in Chile because they have high prices of power. In Argentina, they have low prices of power and no incentives, and you can see it turns up white. So you can see it's not just a combination of the resource and the technology, but it's also local and financial conditions and incentives. The one other thing that we just did recently is we're adding hydrology, running high-resolution hydrology models, physically based models. This is some of the other stuff that I worked on when I was at the university, and creating maps of river flow in areas where there's no information. A lot of the gauges, or a lot of the areas of the world do not have gauge networks, especially in a lot of the developing economies. Using these types of modeling characteristics, you can get flow duration curves, and you can start to figure out where's the areas that you might be able to have small hydro that works. Small hydro is great because it's base load power. Just to show you a couple different maps, this is a map I created just for community wind. This is, and the scale is just kind of arbitrary. 2 is marginal, 8 would be very good. And this would be for just a standalone community wind project. And you can see where it's white, it doesn't really work. There's not a lot of wind. But you can see in the areas of the southern cone, and a lot of the areas where there's a lot of population in the Andes, you can see it starting to sparkle up, and throughout Central America. And these are the areas where a lot of wind projects are going in right now. But then again, this is more distributed. This is community level wind. Oops, I think I have to go back one. Oh, sorry. Solar, same thing. Solar has great capacity throughout Latin America at the small scale. And you're seeing a lot of solar being put in right now and a lot of interest in solar. Hydro, same thing. Hydro's baseload power. This is, again, small-scale hydro. This isn't huge dams. I'm not a big fan of huge dams. This is small-scale hydro, and the potential in the regions of Latin America where they have the high potential for small-scale hydro. We're working on geothermal and biomass, but the bottom line is when you start putting these maps all together, pretty much every region has a pretty rich renewable energy resource, and a lot of times it's a hybrid resource. So the last thing we're working on, and I'm going to jump through this real quick, is we're taking all this information, now we're starting to layer on other layers such as transmission, societal factors, off-grid areas in Colombia, and we're actually running this through optimization models to figure out what's the right mix of renewables at that location that minimize costs and maximize renewable energy power generation. This is a levelized cost of energy map, and this is just completed, that basically shows you what an off-grid or a microgrid system optimized on wind and solar could deliver power at. And the thing to point out here is that a diesel system would be around 38 to 42 cents right now. That's right now, and what our diesel price is going to be in 20 years. And anything below that, anything in green or the yellows, is where right now a renewable energy system is more cost effective than a diesel system. It's pretty much everywhere that you'd want to put on solar panels. And this continues to go down. And this is reflecting 2012 price of diesel. Estimates are that by 2032, these renewable energy systems will still be working, and that's what the price of power will be. So it's a real potential for us to start outfitting a lot of systems that are built around diesel right now with solar and wind and other renewables, and they're cost effective today. The last thing is we're working on putting together a company in Colombia that we're going to be going throughout Latin America on. That's going to be basically putting out this information, what cost of systems would be estimates, getting people lined up with installers that would be workforce training on putting the systems in and making sure they're well built and that they're optimized for the resource. The only thing worse than not putting in renewable energy is putting it in where it doesn't work, because then it's there to haunt us for years. And this is just kind of a map showing how we're going to work around Latin America and working into Africa and developing Asia in the future. And that's all I have. Thank you.